some people want to be paid back, and members of the public are wondering, why are we suffering when you are, you have all of this vast wealth? Those are legitimate concerns.
Well, I think you're right about reparations in terms of if people want it, though, what they need to do is you always need to go back to the beginning of a supply chain. Where was the beginning of the supply chain? That was in Africa. And when across the entire world, when slavery was taking place, which was the first nation in the world that abolished slavery? The first nation in the world to abolish it. It was started by William Wilberforce, was the British. In Great Britain, they abolished slavery. 2,000 naval men died on the high seas trying to stop slavery. Why? Because the African kings were rounding up their own people. They had them on cages waiting in the beaches. No one was running into Africa to get them. And I think you're totally right. If reparations need to be paid, we need to go right back to the beginning of that supply chain and say, who was rounding up their own people and having them handcuffed in cages? Absolutely. That's where they should start.
CNN's Don Lemon not anticipating that response to his question about reparations. Critics saying the royal family should pay billions of dollars because of their impact on slavery and colonialism. But Royals analyst Hillary Fordwich shuts it down with that sharp response. She joins us now. She's also a global business consultant and golf champion. And Hillary, we want to get your thoughts on the LIV golf tournament in just a moment. But first, I've got to get your reaction to that clip, which has gone viral. By the way, millions of people seeing it on social media. What goes through your mind right now when you see the response?
Well, first of all, thank you, Emma, for asking that question. I was flabbergasted at the time when Don Lemon asked me that. I was in shock. That was not what I was there to talk about. My interest, Emma, and for everybody, is I'm just always interested in learning the whole story, learning the whole truth. So I'd like people actually to look up and be in contact with Rashid Walters. Rashid Walters reached out to me. He is a fine Black historian. He writes for the Boston Herald, and he reached out to me to say, Hillary, you're absolutely right, and thank you for bringing light to an issue that not many people even know about or hear about today. He talked to me about somebody that I don't think many people have ever heard about, Manu Musa. Who is Manu Musa? He was the richest man in all of history. Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, kind of pale in comparison. Who was he? He was an African who took 12,000 of his own slaves with him to the New World. He traded in gold, salt, and ivory, but mostly from slavery. Exactly what my point was. I just knew about it. And when he asked about that, I wanted to bring light to the root of the story. But I'm not an expert on this. I'm not a historian. I just wanted to answer the big picture. And so everybody looks to the very big picture.
Sure. You say you weren't anticipating that sort of direction of questioning. Let me ask you, though, about why you were talking about the royal family. Of course, it had to do with the Queen's passing and the coverage, the mourning time period in the UK following her death. Because you've been there and you've been speaking to people who have attended the funeral, had conversations about reparations or abolishing this monarchy, had those come up? Is there any interest there at all?
Well, I can't say that I individually had the conversations. I've just seen a lot of conversations, heard a lot of conversations. Now, I don't know everybody. Nobody does. What I wanted to focus on, Emma, was exactly to your question, the magnificent mosaic of mankind that showed up to Q, an English line. They were calling it the Elizabeth line. And they were, to your question, they were people of all races, all religions, men in turbans, ladies in saris. There were people doing the cross in front of the coffin, Catholic people. There were people of all races who were interviewed with, yes, accents that were from the Caribbean, from Africa. Why did they go? I personally know a Black minister in northern England, in Birmingham, who went with his entire church. They went. Not one person of color, none of my friends here, none of the people I've seen interviewed, no. They talked about, and he talks about the Commonwealth scholarship he went to London to study with and all that the Commonwealth did for him. And a misconception also in this whole discussion is when the Queen ascended to the throne, Emma, for our audience, there were only 8 nations that were members of the Commonwealth. She built it to 56. How did she build it? These are countries that wanted to be part of the Commonwealth, exactly as this young man from Africa had a scholarship from the Commonwealth Trust to go to study architecture in the UK. The Commonwealth does so much good and countries choose to be part of it. common values, common trading, and wanting to be. And any that don't want to, they are free to leave. There are many countries right now, Emma, applying to be part of the Commonwealth, and they're not talking about reparations.
Adding a little bit of perspective there to the conversation. What we played wasn't even the best part. I just want to play this final moment from the interview. Let's listen.
And maybe, I don't know, the descendants of those families where they died in the high seas trying to stop the slavery, that those families should receive something too, I think, at the same time.
It's an interesting discussion, Hillary. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Almost a little stunned. Definitely didn't appear to be anticipating that reaction. Hillary, has CNN reached out for any follow-up interviews?
No, they haven't. I just tell you who has reached out to me, though. A lot of naval men, because their families and their ancestors were in the Navy. They were part of what I was answering there was the question. There were 2,000 British members of the British Navy died on the high seas trying to stop slavery. And that's what I was talking about. And no, they haven't asked me.
Sure.
And I actually, this is not my lane. I'd like people to actually talk to Rashid Walters and others that are experts on this.
Well, before we let you go, could we ask you about golf and the LIV golf tournament as well? Because you're just so knowledgeable on a number of topics here. We've learned that the commissioner is now visiting Capitol Hill to address concerns over the circuit's ties to Saudi Arabia. Of course, this has come into the news. There has been some controversy about that. What are you watching for in this meeting?
Well, a few things here, Emma, for our audience, just quickly to give big picture. I always say this issue, it's a very complex issue. It's about the following. The 3 M's with an S on the end. Money, morality, monopoly, and the S being sports washing. This was Greg Norman, who is a famous golfer, for those that are in the golf industry, an Aussie. And he is the CEO of LIV Golf. This is a Saudi-backed golf league. His wish, and as he purports, his wish is he thinks golf can be so big. And like me, and like all of us avid golfers, he loves golf. He wants to see golf succeed, and he wants to give golfers more of an opportunity. There's plenty of money there. They want to broaden the sport, embrace all, and have players go, although they're paying them a fortune. That's his perspective. What he was in Washington for was because the M that I mentioned, monopoly. There is rather a perception from them and from LIV Tour that the PGA is a monopoly. And so they have contested that. They were meeting with the Republican Study Committee, which is a Republican caucus. They were meeting with them, basically talking about being a monopoly. Now, I won't quote which congressman said what.
Sure.
But some of the congressmen were saying, look, you know, this is terrible morality. You're just really, in the S's, trying to sports wash. And that's what many people say. So what do I expect from this? I hope that golf can be so big that everyone can participate. One of the things that LIV Tour did was they conducted extensive studies throughout the globe to see what the fans wanted. What did they want more of? They want more fan engagement and interaction. But I must say, I am a traditionalist as well. And I think those that respect, admire, and want traditional golf with the 4 majors, not run by the PGA, but I'm hoping that it can all be embraced. I also would like to refer people to 2 things. Please read the Hill's report on exactly what came out of that Republican study meeting, the committee. And then also the Wall Street Journal last Wednesday on the 14th wrote a very good piece regarding Tim Finchem, the CEO of the PGA. And about him and his private jet. So I refer people to those.
And for out of time, always keep learning. I think that is a very clear point that Hillary has made with us and shared with us this morning. Thank you, Hillary Fordwich. Appreciate your time, as always.
Absolutely.